I decided that I would go back to school, but the job that I had, I could not keep it. So I actually decided to quit that job because it was full time and because it was so far from where I was going to be going to school. And I was actually up for a promotion and I had to decline. Now, it would have increased my pay, and promotion sounds like a great thing, but that was not what I was going for.
Not as a big fork in the road. Like, I can continue this job and get more pay, but now all of my attention is going to be towards this job, and you may have to let that dream go.
Going to medical school was definitely my priority. I ended up getting, at one point in time, 4 different jobs. Hey, man.
Hey, man. Me home.
How many times I got to tell you not to put your uniforms on my good sofa?
Don't yell at me, woman. I drop my uniform wherever I want. I work 15 jobs. I don't have time for your foolishness. When I come home, I'm tired, damn it.
What's good, everybody? We are talking Q&A about something I think a lot of you all who are listening are going through right now. This is something that I went through. Definitely something that Dr. Renee went through. And that is basically what to do when you are trying to get into medical school, but you are in another career or you are doing something different. This is something that we call a non-traditional pre-med. All right. So you ready to answer this question?
Yes. Who are you and who am I?
Okay. Oh, we got to listen. We family with everybody now. Do we got to tell everybody who we are?
Yes, because you have new listeners and they have no idea.
Oh, then you, okay. So let me welcome you all.
Yeah.
Let me welcome you all to the family. All right. Guys, I'm Dr. Nee, host of Docs Outside the Box for the past 9 years. I'm joined by my co-host who has the most, Dr. Renee.
I thought
Now we're going to stop right there.
I thought you were going to rhyme a little bit more.
Well, I'm a pretty good rapper, guys. I'm a pretty good rapper. It's to the point where I wrote this rap. Guys, I'm going to put you up on game. I wrote this rap back when I was around 9 years old, 10 years old in Queens, New York.
Your sister might have written it, but okay.
In another episode, we're going to talk about that. So, but that's still through, it's in copyright. It's in court right now.
Between you and your sister?
Yeah, we have this in court.
Those literally 5 lines that you are arguing that...
5 bars. Please understand music.
5 lines? No,
5
these are
bars.
lines, because these are
no,
not
these
bars.
are bars. Ignorant people are a waste of time. That's a bar. But yet they commit the crime. Second bar. You see, understand music, understand how rap is done.
Okay.
So, listen, this is the issue that I have a lot on this show is that, like, there's an expertise that I bring that you don't have, and then you try to critique me. Listen, anybody else who knows about music, who knows about bars, write in, let us know what's going on, all right?
Yeah, let Dr. Nee know what's going on, because he don't know what's going on.
Okay. All right. We got a question from Jay. Jay says, hi, I'm currently in my second gap year, studying for my MCAT while working a full-time job. And he puts in quotes or in parentheses overnight. So this is an overnight gig on the ambulance as an EMT. Okay. That's busy. I am planning to apply this upcoming cycle. It has definitely been a struggle balancing studying and working for a department with such a high call volume. The longer hours can take a toll on my studying, but cutting back hours is not possible due to my financial responsibilities. Do you have any suggestions on how to balance working while studying? Thank you in advance. I really appreciate the knowledge I've gained from your show. Jay. Yo, Jay, thank you for writing. This is a really good question. Like I said before, I'm just going to be very brief and then I'll let you jump into this because I know this is more your bag. But so, when you're in medical school, or excuse me, when you're in college, it's super, the path is you are taking your classes. Obviously, you don't have to worry about, there's not many financial worries because more than likely someone has already paid the bill, right? Like you have student loans or, something, you scholarship or what have you, but you're already in school. You already have housing. The next step is once you finish, then you go straight into medical school if you're going to go the traditional route. But someone like me, like I was working, I had to take 2 years off. And for a time I was working at Sports Authority. I was working at CompUSA. And then eventually I went back to Lehigh University and I did some grad assistant work. But before you answer the question, or I don't know how you want to answer the question, do you want to let people know kind of what you did for those 10 years in between and then kind of go from there?
10 years, really, Nee? You know what's really funny is that, like, you try to take these jabs and you think I'm not going to notice, but I got you. You know what I'm saying? I got you. I got the
I
jab.
would like you to center Jay into this. Can you
Okay.
center Jay?
Yeah, you
He
should
needs help.
censor Jay too, because that jab was unnecessary. Anyway, so yes, thank you, Jay, for writing this question. Like you said, Nee, this is a very common issue that I run into with premeds that I work with all the time. That work school balance is it's really hard to answer because not everybody's situation is the same. And so the only thing that I can say is one, I can tell you my story. And two, say do the best that you possibly can. Like that's literally all you can do. Now, I will tell you my story very briefly. During my 4 gap years, not 10. Okay. Um, so when I
Is
graduated,
that a jab at me?
no, it's not a jab at you. That's a correction
Oh,
at
okay.
what you
I was
said.
about to say
Yeah, okay.
I could do the show by myself.
You really could
Keep going.
too.
I could.
You really could.
Yeah.
Um, so when I graduated from college, one of the first things that I did was I actually ended up getting a job at a laboratory. It was like a food lab. So like, when you do like those recalls and stuff like that, that was me, right? Be like salad, don't eat it. Fish, don't eat it. Tuna has so many rat hairs in it. If you want to eat it, that's fine. That's what the FDA allows, but it's up to you. So that's what I was doing. I was working at a lab, and I started working at the lab full time during that summer. And by the time the summer ended, I realized that I wanted to go back to school and do some post-bac courses. So I did a DIY post-bac myself. And once I realized, okay, I'm going to go back to school and I don't, one, qualify for student loans because I'm going back part-time. And two, I just didn't want my parents to have to help me pay for school because they had helped me pay for college already. I wanted to pay for it out of pocket.
So while you're working this job, you're living at home.
I'm living at home. I am
Okay,
living at home.
got you.
And that's
Yeah.
important also, right? Because it depends on your situation.
And
I was
question,
living at home with
did you
my
try to
parents.
did you apply to medical school while you were in college?
No.
Okay, so you finished, you graduated, and you're like, all right, pack up and everything goes straight to your parents' house, and then you got to
Right.
figure out a job. Got you.
Exactly.
Okay.
So, and I'm going to give you some takeaways from my story that, might help some of you out there. But yes, I was living at home. I didn't want my parents to help me pay for school. They were obviously paying for all of my living expenses, right? In terms of like food, clothing, shelter, not so much clothing, but food, shelter. Um, and so I decided that I would go back to school, but the job that I had, I could not keep it and go back to school the way that I wanted to. And so
Why
I
is that?
actually, because it was full time. So I actually
Mm.
decided to quit that job because it was full time and because it was so far from where I was going to be going to school. I was going to be going to school in Manhattan and I was going to be going part time, but I was working in Long Island. And that just was not going to work for me. And I was actually up for a promotion. They were actually going to promote me to go and work like in a pharmacy part of the lab that they had just started building, and I had to decline. I had to decline. And I was like, no. And the my boss was like, well, why? And I was like, I want to go back to school. I can't take this promotion. Now it would have increased my pay, and promotion sounds like a great thing, but that was not what I was going for. I was not going to that job to stay in that job. And so I had to let that go because that was not my priority.
It was a
But
job. It wasn't
it
your
was a
career.
job. It was not my career.
Yeah.
So,
And then once you realize like, hey, like now there's a big fork in the road. Like I can continue this job and get more pay and, get some of the things that I didn't get before. But now all of my attention is going to be towards this job. And
job.
you may have to let
Exactly.
that dream go of
Exactly.
going into or studying for the MCAT
Right.
or doing post back work. So I get that part.
Exactly.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough.
So going to medical school was definitely my priority. So I had to get on the ball and start on this journey of doing this DIY. What I ended up doing was something that was extremely piecemeal. I ended up getting at one point in time 4 different jobs. Hey, man. Hit it out.
So what are the jobs?
Hey, man, me home.
How many times I got to tell you not to put your uniforms on my good sofa?
Don't yell at me, woman. I drop my uniform wherever I want. I work 15 jobs. I don't have time for your foolishness. When I come home, I'm tired, damn it.
What are the jobs that you got?
So I got a job working as and all of these were part-time, obviously, very flexible.
I didn't know all the jobs you got.
So,
OnlyFans.
One was,
OnlyFans.
Me? Shut it. Okay, first of all.
Okay, what was the jobs you got? What were the jobs you got?
But no, it wasn't OnlyFans.
Okay.
And if it were OnlyFans, you would have been my biggest customer. Thanks.
I didn't know you.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, I don't know you. Come on, let's go.
I ended up getting a job at a nonprofit organization, and I was kind of like a marketing assistant.
Okay.
I ended up getting a tutoring job at a high school.
Okay.
I ended up doing another job actually in Long Island that was on the weekends. So it was AHRC, which essentially was for people with developmental disabilities. So I could work that on the weekend. And then one other job. What other job did I get? There's one other job that I got, and I can't even.
Weren't you a teacher?
No, that was a tutoring job that turned into a teaching job. Dang it. If I remember the fourth job, I'll let you know. But they were.
So either way, we get the point. You were doing multiple jobs.
I know the last job. I was also tutoring at Polytechnic.
Okay.
So I was tutoring in 2 places, tutoring for high school and then tutoring for college.
Okay.
So, and those were extremely flexible for me. Right. And so I ended up having to piecemeal everything, but it allowed me to do the DIY, right, post back, and it allowed me to pay for school. So for me, that was way more convenient, if you will, right? Because convenience to me wasn't, oh, I have to go here and then I have to go there. I have to go. No, the convenience for me was what will allow me to do the thing that will bring me to my goal. And that is going to be the most convenient thing. So if I have to travel to, 2 different boroughs and go to Long Island as well, then that's what I have to do. And so I was able to do that and really succeed in my postbac because I was able to set my own schedule around my classes and determine how much time during the day did I need to study. Because
your postbac was at Hunter College, right?
My postbac was at CUNY Hunter College. Yeah.
And just to be clear, this wasn't the way you did it. It wasn't a formal postbac, right? You did it. You piecemealed it all together.
Correct.
Got you. How did you pay for that?
I paid for that with all those jobs. I paid for it.
Okay, so you didn't take any loans or anything like that?
No loans, no nothing. I paid for it out of pocket. And I worked out something with the financial aid office because obviously I didn't have all the money up front. Luckily, a city college is much, much less expensive than a private school, right? So one, I didn't have as much money to come up with as if I was going to a private or even a state school. So I worked something out with the financial aid office to say, okay, I want to pay this much now and then this much later. And so they worked with me and they allowed me to pay for school as I went along.
And folks, just so you know, there's thousands of people who come out of this. Like some people who are not familiar with the CUNY system, the City University of New York system. If you're from a different state or you're not familiar with it, you're like, oh, this is like a community college. No, it's not. Guys, this is a high powered university that just happens to be run in the city of New York, right? And they have different campuses and some high powered people that you heard of and may not have heard of. Let me type in. You keep going while I look up some of the alumni of CUNY.
There are lots of leaders that come from the CUNY system. Lots of prestigious.
My dad went there, so
yes,
and he's really important.
But yeah, lots of what we would consider high-powered people, very important people, leaders, come from the CUNY system, and so. For me, it was a great place to go, Hunter College in particular, right? Like you said, there are different campuses, and the different campuses can be known for different things. Hunter College is particularly known for its sciences. And so, actually, on the recommendation of my sister, or suggestion of my sister, I ended up going to Hunter College because I was going to go to a community college. That's originally what my plan was, to stay in Long
Mm-hmm.
Island, go to a
Mm-hmm.
community college so I could keep that job. That was, so I want Jay and all the pre-meds out there to kind of understand what I just said. I was going to take my post back at a community college, which, it's not a horrible thing, but it truly is not necessarily the best thing to come from a 4-year college and then go do, post back at a community college. It's not well looked upon, if you will, by medical schools. But I was going to go and do that so I could keep that job, right? I was going to let this job derail what I wanted to do. And so instead of staying at that job, I ended up quitting so that I could put myself in the best position possible, in the best environment possible, to be able to get an education that I knew would help me get into medical school and to
I
study
kept, I kept,
that.
I made a list of the things that, when you're trying to balance studying for med school and you are not in college, right? So you are in another career, or you're considering, like, you're in that transitory state, like how you were and me, like you're in your gap year basically, or your gap years, and you're trying to figure out what to do. But number two I have on there is choose the right job. So I have here flexible or part-time work, low stress jobs, and remote work. And what I would say to Jay is I agree with you. Like, Renee's advice is, what she did was ideal. In essence, she prioritized getting into medical school over all the jobs. Now, the situation is a little bit different because she could stay with her parents. Parents would cook, they provide food, housing. Like, that's a huge expense that she ain't got to worry about, right? All she had to worry about, in essence, was getting into med school. You had to take care of your classes, you had to get transportation there, and you had to get jobs and so forth. That's what you had to do. But I definitely think that one of the biggest things right now, Jay, is to determine, is your job more important, or keeping your job more important than getting into medical school?
Mhm.
And that's the fork in the road. And you may have to take several jobs. You may have to cut back and do something else. I'm going to tell a quick story. So this is somebody that I'm super proud of. Now, not in medical school, but in another genre. So my nephew right now, who's about ready to graduate from law school, graduated with a degree in, I think he graduated a degree in finance. And he was working at various banks after college and just doing the bank thing, right? Like, working like not a bank teller, but like the person who has a small little office that goes and,
The little
you
desk.
tell the little desk, and you talk to them about your banking and so forth. And at the end, they're trying to sell you, why you should invest your money with them and so forth. Something that was very unfulfilling to him. And he all of a sudden told me, like, he's like, hey, Nee, like, Uncle Nee, I want to go to law school. And I was like, okay. And he kept telling me this over like several months. And then he finally said, hey, I have a plan. I'm leaving my job and I'm going to get into law school. And I was like, well, how are you going to do this? And he told me. So I'm going to be very honest, guys. So what he did was,
Yes.
over that year, I was very impressed with him. Over that year, he put his head down and he saved money like crazy. Number two, he moved into a neighborhood that wasn't the greatest, wasn't the worst, wasn't the best, but he moved into a neighborhood that, in essence, is where he kind of grew up in. He wasn't currently living. He moved into this small little apartment. It was like a basement apartment, right?
Save
So
money.
he was able to be in an area that he was going to be safe, that was going to be low cost, and that, in essence, he was going to be left alone, and he was living by himself, right? And then he made sure, three, that he developed a plan that he was going to study for the LSATs. And no matter what, that plan was going to take, like, there was nothing else that was going to get in his way. Now, granted, at this time, he wasn't married. He wasn't married at this time, was he?
I don't know.
Yeah. Either way, no children, and then he left the job. And for several months, 6 or 7 months, this is what he was doing. And then he called me one day and said, hey, this was my score in the LSAT. And 2 weeks later, he's like, I started getting these, acceptances, or however long it took.
However long,
I started
yeah,
getting,
I don't think it was
he started getting these acceptances. And I was really proud of him. I know sometimes people are like, well, law school is different than getting to med school, but I was pretty impressed by his grind, right? Because he made a plan to be like, look, what I'm doing right now, working in the bank, I know that that's what I was studying and that's what everybody is expecting me to do, but that's not what my heart is telling me to do.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to sacrifice and save like crazy. And I'm going to move into a neighborhood that I may not want to live in. And I'm going to be uber isolated. And I'm going to study and I'm going to follow through on that because I got to get to my ultimate goal of becoming a lawyer. And now my guy is, he's graduating, in a couple of months and he'll be done. And I'm super proud of him.
Yeah.
So basically what I'm trying to say, Jay, is that you can do this, but it's going to probably have to look different than how it looks for you right now. Right. I don't know if you have children. I don't know if you have a spouse. I'm not sure about your social situation, but it's something that you may have to embrace. And I think it's something that a lot of people do. They don't necessarily think that they're doing it, but that's what they do, where they're just like, look, I'm going to have to change directions. All right. It is my favorite part of the show where I get to talk about locum tenens and what me and Renee do, as well as answer a question from the audience. So listen, guys, me and Dr. Renee have been doing locum tenens for well over 10 years. We, listen, it gives us the career fulfillment that we need, but also at the same time allows us to have the work-life balance that we need to have, right? It allows me to be here to talk to you. It allows me to be, plugged in with my family, my kids, my wife, and still be here and talk to you guys for close to 10 years now. So listen, let's answer this question from Dr. Kevin. Dr. Kevin is a full-time locum tenens emergency medicine physician, and this is what he writes. I love the flexibility of locums, but since I'm not employed by a hospital, I don't have benefits. This is real. Should I really be thinking about disability insurance right now? Dr. Kevin, I appreciate the question. Thank you very much for writing in this question. I got all the answers. And the short answer to this is 100% yes. Yes. And look, if you're already working as a locum tenens ER doc, man, you should have had disability insurance yesterday, right? So let's get to the point. Like, one of the biggest misconceptions I would say about disability insurance right now, if you're listening, is that you can worry about it later, right? I'm going to worry about it later. I'm going to take care of it when it comes up. And later you can put whatever time interval on it. But it's a big deal, right? Because especially as a locum tenens doctor, you are your own safety net. Right? Like, there is no HR department if an issue occurs. There's no benefits package, right? Part of the reason why you get paid so well is, there's no benefits, right? So you have to purchase benefits on your own, right? And there definitely is not any type of employer-backed disability coverage. I'll be very honest about that. And even the employer-backed disability coverage that you have is not very good. Like, even if you are working as an employed doctor, you should have your own private type of disability insurance. And that's real talk, right? So if something happens to you, an injury, an illness, a burnout related condition, and let's be real, that happens more often than you think. And let's say you can't work. Your income stops. That's it. There's no salary that you get to depend on. There's no work. That means there's no pay, right? So that is where a private disability insurance plan comes in. And also, if you're looking for a private disability insurance plan, like, you got to make sure that it's true own occupation policy. I'm going to say that again. Make sure it is true own occupation policy. You want to be sure that when you're looking at a plan that it says that lingo in there, right? And that means that if you can't work, I'm going to be honest, if let's get to the real. Let's say as an emergency medicine doctor, or let's say you're an anesthesiologist, if you cannot work in that specific field, right? Or even general surgery, right? I'm a general surgeon. If I can't do general surgery anymore, but I want to do something else, that means I'm still going to get paid, right? And that's a really big deal, right? There's a lot of fine language out there that is meant to trip you up. But if you have true own occupation disability insurance, that means that you can do other things if you can't work in your specific field, right? And since you're a 1099 contractor, I got a little cheat code here, right? Your premiums may be tax deductible as a business expense. So not only are you protecting your income, you're being smart with your taxes also. Now, that last caveat, I'm gonna be honest with you, make sure you talk to your tax professional about that. Make sure you talk to your financial advisor about that. They may give you some additional or a different type of advice. So it's super important that you run that by them first, okay? So, look, disability insurance, Dr. Kevin, it's not about fear. It's about financial responsibility. You've worked hella hard. You've worked way over 10 years to protect this career, to build this career, excuse me. So protect that income at all costs, right? It's super important, right? So I recommend, if you're looking to get disability insurance, listen, I'm telling you right now, I recommend you work with Jamie Fleischner with Set for Life Insurance. All right. We've been working with her personally for over 10 years. She helped me and Renee get rid of our really expensive disability insurance and get to something that was way more cost effective and actually had better coverage. And that actually was the biggest start of us paying off our student loan debt, was us first realizing that, hey, we're paying way too much to disability insurance as well as to whole life insurance. Let's get something that's way more economical. And, 3 years later, we paid off over almost $700,000 of student loan debt. So we know a thing or two about working with cost-effective disability insurance. Super important. So I recommend Jamie Fleischner with Set for Life Insurance. She specializes in coverage for doctors, especially independents like you and me. All right. So there's no fluff in what she's talking about. It's just honest advice. And she's got access to multiple top tier carriers. So I want you to take a look at setforlifeinsurance.com or tap on the link in the show notes. All right. To set up a free, no pressure consultation with her. All right. Super important. And remember, this is Docs Outside the Box, and outside the box doesn't mean unprotected. Dr. Kevin, thanks for writing in. My story was I applied to medical school while I was in college the first time. We can talk about specifics about how bad my strategy was, but I didn't get in. And I didn't make a plan for what I was going to do when I graduated. I was just that devastated. And the other reason, too, is I was on a wait list up until like June or July of finishing college and when I possibly could have gone into medical school. So I was just kind of had all my eggs in that basket. And when it didn't come through, I was like, all right, well, I got to find a job. And I'll tell you right now, y'all, like I was looking for a job everywhere. Like I worked at CompUSA, doesn't exist anymore, but I was selling computers and computer warranties. If you want to know what my job was like, go watch the 40-Year-Old Virgin.
Hit it, right? Alfred.
If you don't take this Michael McDonald DVD that you've been playing for 2 years straight off, I'm going to kill everyone in the store and put a bullet in my brain.
Get back on the floor.
Seriously, that was my job, right? Like in the morning, you're setting up and it's the same soundtrack from the morning until the evening. There's all this interdepartmental politics and people dating each other and who's going to sell the most extended warranties and all this. I'll give you a free printer if you buy this warranty. It's crazy. People hanging out after. It was crazy. But I realized I was like, I don't belong here. Then I worked at Sports Authority selling sneakers and dunking on the basketball before people were coming in. It was nuts. Oh, yeah.
No, you weren't.
Listen, we lowered the basketball hoop.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, yeah. Okay. Tell the truth.
We lowered the basketball hoop, right? And we dunking and, next a customer comes in. You're like, what, man? What, man? I'm playing basketball right now. But then that was like that for like a good 6 or 7 months. And then at the same time, my sister was working. I think she was working at AT&T. I forgot what she was doing with them, but she tried to get me a job with AT&T, and you have to take this test. I failed this test. I remember there was time where I was trying to take a test with Sears, and like I failed to get a job at Sears. I was struggling, and this is someone with a bio degree from Lehigh University, right? I was struggling.
Let me ask you a question. Do you think that you failed these tests because you actually knew that this is not the job that you wanted and you just didn't put the effort forward to do well on the test?
No, I didn't know how to take the test, right? These are tests that are like asking you questions about, basically they want to know if you're going to steal from the job, right?
So the answer was yes, you were going to steal?
Right. But they would ask like different types of questions in different types of ways. It was like these psychological tests that I didn't understand, right?
Like she's a psychopath. He cannot work here.
They kind of were right, actually. I didn't belong there, right? It's true. I didn't belong there. So I struggled, yo. I didn't know what to do. And eventually I reached out because I knew that my college, like my coach, they did something called graduate assistant work, where you can go back and you can be a graduate assistant where you can help coach whether it's track, whether it's football, whatever sport it may be. I decided to go track and cross country, and then they would pay a significant portion towards your classes that you took. So for me, I didn't.
Coach Deb, thank goodness for Coach Deb.
Yeah, I didn't go into a, what do you call it? Coach Deb. Shout out to Coach Deb. You know, like I didn't do a formal program, but in essence, I did a DIY kind of post-bac program also. So I took out a little bit of a loan to kind of live on campus, or excuse me, to live off campus. My rent was like $290 a month. And I had a closet, basically. It was really small. And I was with most of the people who were, I lived in a house, a track house that had, you know, all of the people who I knew when I graduated, you know, weeks before or months before. So I knew all these people. And I did that. And I did it for about a year and a half. And I was kind of moving in a direction of getting a master's. And then, you know, I was applying to med school. I got way more strategic, and I got in, you know, and I look back at those 2 years, and, you know, for me, same thing. Like, I just decided that, look, like, I got to figure out something, but I got to get a job that's going to pay me enough that I can take care of a little bit of expenses, but also at the same time, I got to focus myself on getting towards the goal. And that's what we're saying to you, Jay, is that, listen, man, like, if you really want this, you're going to have to do something completely drastic, right?
Yeah.
And you're going to have to really make this work. I don't know if you want to add anything else. I made a little bit of a list. Other things I have on here is protect your time and energy, right? So I have, like, you got to be very strategic with how you say no. I'm talking about social events. Even with you, Jay, extra work shifts. They ask you for that, you're going to have to say no. Commitments that don't align with your goal, you got to limit those. Be super, super smart about that. Avoid burnout, right? Schedule at least one rest day per week, right? And you got to get sleep, right? So I get it. You got to study for this test. You got to study for getting into med school, but you also got to remember that you got to be smart about it and don't burn yourself out. And things like eating, right? Like sometimes creating or making dinner could be a big deal that it kind of demotivates you. Yo, Sundays or Saturdays, meal prep. You know, keep it very simple. Follow a simple menu every week and go from there.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing that I would add is, you know, kind of like with my situation and a situation that I had with one of my students who just got into medical school. Shout out to Tara. She's going to PCOM. But one of the things that she and I had similarly was that we had the option of living at home with our parents. The difference with her, though, was that at one point she was kind of living on her own, and she didn't want to have that reliance on her mother, right? To go and live with her mother. And, you know, I asked her, I said, well, is your mother supportive? And she's like, oh yeah, my mother's supportive. She tells me to come home all the time. I'm like, then what you doing
go home.
there? Go home.
Like just promise her free healthcare when you get into med school. All right, you'll be all right.
I'm like, go home, right? It's super, super important to recognize who is supportive of you, right? And really, really take that support. You don't have to do this alone. You really don't. There are people out there who are out there willing to support you. And if you keep rejecting their help, you're just going to make things harder for yourself, you know? And I know sometimes, you know, you feel like, well, no, I'm a certain age. I should be able to, I should be this, I should be that. You know what? No one is too old to get help. No one is too old to get help. And that's something that you're just going to have to learn. And because that is not just a lesson for now while you're trying to get into medical school, that is going to be a lesson for the rest of your life. But certainly you are going to see this in medicine.
So real quick, before you go on. So she said Coach Deb. Guys, Coach Deb, that was my track and field coach for the 400, 800 mile. He was my track and field coach for 3 years. If I did not go back and tell her, Coach, I'm having an issue with getting my goal of being a doc, I think that, you know, this graduate assistant job, is it possible that I could fit into that, right? If I didn't mention that to her, I would have still been working at these different jobs. And to be honest with you, my goal of becoming a doctor would have been prolonged. Right. So yes, I have to shout her out. You're right, Renee. Like we got to shout her out. I got to shout her out because if I didn't ask for help in that situation, I would have just been like standing on my pride and I would have been still trying to figure all this stuff out. So I'm sorry. Go ahead. You're right. You're right.
No, yeah. I mean, it's things like that, right? Sharing your story, sharing your plight with people who you know care about you, and would be willing to help you, but you have to be able to ask for that help. You've got to ask for that help. So I would say, to Jay, look around you and
Say
see.
Jay.
What?
Say Jay. I know you want to get to med school.
No.
That's another bar. That's another bar.
That is
Say
not a
Jay.
bar.
You want to get
Ain't
in med
nobody
school?
taking you to court for that one.
I didn't say Drake.
Yeah, I said nobody taking you to court for that one. Nobody. But anyway, yeah, look around you, see who around you would be willing to help. You've got to be able to figure out how you're going to do this so that you can get to your ultimate goal of getting to medical school. And like Nee said, you're going to have to do something drastically different if you want drastically different results.
Jay, check this out. Jay, check this out. Check this out, Jay. You got to stay accountable. Here's another thing. Got to stay accountable. Renee, you got to talk to them about this. So I got in here 3 things. Join a study group, Jay. I don't know. You got to figure it out. Something that you can, someplace, somehow, somebody, something that's going to be able to make sure that you can check in and do something to keep you motivated, right? Then I don't know if you need to use a coach. Renee's on my left-hand side, I think, or a mentor, right? So that you can continue to discuss your goal of moving forward. So one thing I didn't let you know also is my nephew was in Alpha Phi. Was it Alpha Phi Alpha?
Oh.
Yeah, he's an Alpha, and very, very successful people in that. So when he finished from college, he kept in touch with a lot of folks who, were very successful in that fraternity, a lot of them being lawyers and judges. So he was letting them know about his progress and they were keeping him accountable. A lot of them would allow him to have some jobs where he could, do some work and make some money doing that type of stuff in the law field. So basically what I'm saying is, see if you can find someone who can keep you accountable or something that can keep you accountable. And then you need to be able to track your progress. Renee, I don't know if you want to talk about that, but he needs that. Like, he can't just say, I'm just going to take, one job, slow down and really focus. But how does he make sure that he's progressing towards the goal, right? The deadline,
So my advice to you, any pre-med out there, if you're out there and you're like, I need to get to medical school and I'm so far from getting there, but I need to get there, write it down. And I don't mean get on your computer. What I'm talking about, use your hand. Remember, do people still use paper and pen?
Not many people use paper anymore. Yeah, everybody writes it down. They use Notion. They use Google Docs. They use the notes on their
There's something about seeing your plan written in your handwriting. Something about writing out that plan, having your brain literally make the motions, right? Help your hand to make the motions that solidifies that plan in your brain, that will help you to essentially manifest it. That is extremely important, and I think we've kind of lost the art of that, but that's what I would suggest. Get yourself a notebook, something.
Yeah, because if you don't write it down, it's just a dream. Is that what they say?
It's a dream. Right. Yeah. Like you're never going to manifest it. And it's going to be floating around, in cyberspace somewhere, right? Write it down. Go back. Write out what's going on. Journal it. Figure out what you need to do. But I would strongly recommend that you write down your plan. I wrote down my plan. I would go back to it. I had a notebook that I would use. I would check things off. I would write how I felt about things. I manifested it and it happened. So that's what I would recommend to Jay and all the other pre-meds out there who are listening.
Big thing too I have is creating a realistic study schedule. Do you talk to your pre-meds about that, right?
Oh my God, yes.
Quality. I got quality over quantity. Yes. Focus, distraction-free 2-hour study blocks. Use a calendar. Set weekly goals.
Yes.
That might be better than daily tasks.
Yeah.
You know,
I think setting weekly goals will help kind of allow that flexibility, but also keep you on task. But the realistic study schedule, let's talk about that really quickly, because if you don't have a realistic study schedule, then you're essentially engaging in an exercise in futility, right? Um, I've had people jam pack their schedule with work and then say, I'm going to study here. And it's like, okay, that's great. When are you going to sleep? When are you going to eat? Just
I'll sleep
because
when I'm
there
down.
are hours, right?
That's what Snickers are for.
Right. Just because there are hours that are free on the calendar doesn't mean that you are going to have the energy to study. You have to figure out what your energy level is going to be after a day of work, after a day of play, after a day of whatever it is that you're doing. You have to be very realistic, which is why I think I like what you said about, listen, you have to limit, your you have to limit your availability to essentially this goal. You cannot go off and be like, oh, well, we need somebody to work overtime. I do it.
Yo,
Or,
let me ask
hey,
you a question.
can you work overtime? No,
Let me ask you a
I
question
can't.
real quick, because this is a little curveball. Because sometimes I think we got to throw in some examples. Those really work. So I was really intentional. So, guys, I had the opportunity to go to medical school at the osteopathic medical school in New Jersey, and I lived in New Jersey, versus go to medical school at the osteopathic school in Kansas City University right now. And I was really, they even offered me a scholarship to stay home in New Jersey. And I deliberately said that I was going to go out to Kansas City. The one main reason was I didn't trust myself being close to home and studying for something that I always wanted to do for my entire life. Seriously, that's what it boiled down to.
Shout out to your
I,
sister.
my sister also, the school in Kansas City accepted me first, right? So she was like, listen, if they want you and they were able to let you know so quickly, like I think within 48 hours, they let me know that I was accepted. Whereas the school in New Jersey, I think they had me on wait list, right?
I don't
Yeah.
remember if they had you on wait list, but it took a while. Yeah.
They had me on wait list, or it took a while, but eventually they said you're in and here's a scholarship. And it's, an hour
And it
away from
wasn't
home.
like, don't get Dr. Nee wrong. It wasn't like a full scholarship. It was like five G's. I think
Yeah.
it was. It wasn't a full.
But it was something to sweeten the pot,
Yeah.
right? It was something to sweeten the pot.
And
And
and and by the way, they had given you that scholarship after you turned them down.
was that true?
Yes, because by then you and I knew each other. We were talking on the phone, and
Yeah,
remember,
Renee
our
also, and just
mentor
low key
had
also,
told us that would happen
Renee also got that scholarship also.
after I turned them.
But I ended up saying I'm going to go to Kansas City. I wanted to go to Kansas City because I really wanted to focus on becoming a doctor. Like there was no way that, obviously it's 21-hour drive away. I just knew that if I was in New Jersey and my friends wanted to go out, if they want to go to Atlantic City, where I would live, where I would be in med school, they gonna stay at my place and then go, so how they gonna come party with me while I'm trying to study and then I'm not gonna go with them? I'm gonna go with them, right? Or just all these different things. So I deliberately, or family stuff. And I deliberately said, no, let me do Kansas City for 4 years. And it was great, so there's some small little sacrifices that I had to make, but it was worth it. My family really helped me during that time. Me and Renee became really close. She became my family, so to speak, and it was a great decision. So yeah, there are times where you just have to really take, you have to limit how people can get to you in order for you to really study. I'm not saying become a monk,
Right.
but you may have to.
Right.
So
yeah, no, that's a really good point, because I think
what about
to do everything.
What about long-term timelines, right? So, for example, like if you're working, instead of doing like a 3-month timeline for the MCAT, should you consider like a 5 to 6 month timeline for your MCAT?
Yeah, absolutely.
What about
I mean,
that?
realize that you're going to have to make adjustments, right? Just the way you're going to have to make adjustments, to be able to do your post-bac work, or anything else that you're doing to get to the point of applying to medical school successfully. Yeah, I mean, your MCAT study plan is probably not going to look the same. Like my MCAT study plan was a very long and ongoing study plan, very long and ongoing. I remember being at Hunter College and I'd have like, let's say if I had a class in the late morning, but then my next class wasn't until, 4 hours later, right? In the late afternoon, I would use that time, right? I would use that time very wisely. I'd go down to the library, put my head down, and just focus, figure out what I needed to learn, do some content. Then I started doing, practice questions. I would do practice questions all the time. Right. And that's one of the things that I recommend to all my pre-meds, right? Don't wait until you finish doing all of your content to start doing practice questions. Do your content. So I'd probably do like maybe an hour or so of content. And then, maybe I'd go get something to eat really quickly. Then I'd come back, do my practice questions, and I became so efficient actually at doing that there was at one point in time that I joined MAPS, right? Minority Association of Pre-Med Students, right? The SNMA portion, that's the pre-med portion of the SNMA. And I became so efficient at being able to study and just figuring out my schedule that I was actually able to join MAPS, start to do activities, even became the MAPS chapter president at one point. And so it didn't disrupt my studies, right? So, once you get into the groove and you start realizing what your priority is, it becomes easier and easier, right? The learning curve of how to do that becomes very, is very steep at first. But after a while, you're just kind of cruising and, you can do it, Jay. You can do it. You're just going to
Hey,
have
did
to
you?
make some tough decisions.
Hey guys, so remember in the beginning of the show we were talking about famous CUNY graduates. We got Ed Koch.
Mhm.
How am I doing? Ed Koch graduated from CUNY.
Used to be
Jonas
an
Salk.
NYC. So for people who don't know, Ed Koch used to be NYC mayor. Mhm.
Yes. Then you have Jonas Salk, right, with
Really?
the polio vaccine.
Polio? Yeah, look at that.
Upton Sinclair, right? Famous muckraker, right? He wrote a
Mhm.
book, a major book. The one that I always think about, but I was forgetting, but he passed away recently. We have Colin Powell.
Mhm.
Tony Curtis, Henry Kissinger,
Mhm.
Stanley Kubrick. So CUNY, it puts out some really
Yeah.
famous, notable people out there. So,
Yeah.
but listen, Jay, this is a great question. Thank you for writing in. Anybody else who wants to write in, you know how to reach us, right? Renee, you want to tell them how they can get in touch with us, please?
So you can reach us by DMs. You can leave a comment actually in on any one of our posts. You can go down to the show notes and click on fan mail. There's also the text number down there. So if you want to just text us, or you can go to our website, docsoutsidethebox.com, and leave us a question.
All right, y'all. We'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.
Peace. Good luck, Jay.
Good luck, Jay.